My name is Naomi Tran. I'm 32 years old. And 6 years ago, I left San Jose, California, and I've never looked back. Today, I live in Boston and work as a systems software engineer for a cybersecurity firm specializing in military-grade encryption and global banking infrastructures. I'm not just good at what I do. I'm the one they call when everything starts falling apart. When systems crash, deadlines implode, or a vulnerability no one can crack arises, they call Naomi. In my world, I have weight. I have value. But out there, especially to my family, I barely exist. We haven't spoken since 2017. So when my phone buzzed on a cold Wednesday night in mid-October, I froze when I saw the name Emily flash across the screen, my quiet but perceptive cousin. Emily is the only one who has my new number. I picked up. On the other end, her voice was soft and slow. Naomi, your parents are trying to reach you. They want you to come home for Christmas. I paused, sitting down on the edge of the bed in my 4-story walk-up in East Boston, where I live alone. Now? I asked, bitterness creeping into my voice. After all these years of silence? They've been asking about you for a few months now, Emily said. This time, I think they're serious. The call ended. I sat there, staring at the blank white wall, as if it could answer the old questions I'd always tried to avoid. I stopped thinking about family a long time ago, but memories never really go away. They just wait to be triggered. I remembered being 14, curled up in the corner of a clinic, wearing an oversized hoodie to hide my red eyes. Dr. Kaplan, the therapist, once said something I'd never forget. Naomi's problem isn't isolation. It's invisibility. My mother shrugged, smiling faintly. We love all our children equally. But I knew that was a polite lie. My brother, Brandon, was the golden boy. Track athlete, club president, straight A student. He got a brand new car for his 17th birthday. And me? A beat-up second-hand laptop from a flea market, missing 2 keys. Even at Christmas, Brandon's gifts were wrapped in glittery paper with big red bows. Mine were usually something they happened to grab while shopping. And now, they were calling me home. They didn't know who I'd become. To them, I was still the sullen girl at the corner of the dinner table, the quiet one at family gatherings, where Brandon always stole the spotlight. He radiated, filled every room. I was the shadow at the back. But it was in that silence that I found my first real language, the one that made me feel seen: coding. It all started with a torn flyer I spotted near the school library bulletin board. Basic Encryption Club, Room 3B, Wednesdays. I attended the first session out of curiosity, and I never missed a meeting after that. For the first time, I didn't need to be loud to be noticed. I didn't have to compete. All I had to do was write the right line of code. That room, cramped, cluttered, lit by flickering blue LEDs, became my refuge. We rebuilt computers from scrap parts. We learned how to communicate through command lines, debated data structures, helped each other debug until midnight. In that room, I found what my family had never given me: a language I didn't need permission to speak. I even wrote my first game on a borrowed laptop. Mr. Alvarez, the computer science teacher, pulled me aside one afternoon. Naomi, you have something rare, something no one can teach. Don't let anyone make you shrink. His words stuck with me like a background process, silent, persistent, never fading. At 17, I had a plan. Leave San Jose, get into college, rebuild myself from scratch. Brandon, of course, got into a prestigious school in California, fully funded by our parents, no questions asked. Then came Thanksgiving dinner that year. My father raised his glass. To Brandon, for making this family proud at Berkeley. Applause filled the room. My mother added, gently but with a sting, and Naomi is still considering her options. Maybe something stable in an office somewhere. My uncle chuckled. An office job, huh? I could use a stock clerk at my store. The whole table burst into laughter, even my parents. I didn't laugh. I didn't need to. Because I knew what they didn't. I had already been awarded a full scholarship to one of the top tech programs in New York. Tuition, dorm, living expenses, all covered. Quietly, I packed my bags and moved to Manhattan. Lived in a creaky old dorm, waited tables at night, studied relentlessly. I graduated valedictorian and was hired by a cybersecurity firm before my diploma was even printed. 4 years later, I led a multi-million-dollar project, and when the bonus was enough to buy a small house, I called a broker. Just a few days later, they took me to a 2-story brownstone apartment in Fort Greene. Exposed brick, open kitchen, a small balcony overlooking the park. I put down a deposit on that sunny afternoon, my hand trembling as I signed the papers. At 32 years old, I officially became a homeowner. 2 weeks before Christmas, I hosted a housewarming party. Nothing fancy, just true friends, the ones who had sat with me through all the difficult years. We sat on floor cushions among unopened boxes, eating Thai takeout, sipping cheap wine, and laughing at code that once made me cry. Lisa, an old classmate, raised her glass. To Naomi, the quiet one who turned silence into strength. I smiled, moved, but there was still something unresolved within me. I was going home in a week, but this time I wasn't returning as the leftover. I was coming back as someone who had rewritten her story. The week before Christmas, I took time off work, wrapped gifts simply but thoughtfully, and drove overnight back to San Jose. 6 hours on the road, a journey I no longer avoided. The old house appeared in the dim lights. Worn roof tiles, peeling paint, overgrown trees. Each mark of time a reflection of an unhealed past. I rang the bell. My hand trembled slightly. Footsteps. The door cracked open. My mother looked out. Naomi, is that really you? She hugged me quickly, an awkward, unfamiliar hug like we'd long forgotten how to belong to each other. You look so different. Come in. The familiar smell hit me instantly. Old wood polish, mildew, and the same dry potpourri bowl that had never been replaced. The living room was packed with people. Everyone fell silent when I walked in. All eyes turned to me, not with welcome, but with scrutiny. Oh, she finally showed up, someone mumbled. What is she even wearing? I glanced down. A cashmere coat, black slacks, soft leather shoes. Quiet luxury, but here it made me a target. Brandon stepped out of the kitchen, his arm around a young woman. Everyone, this is Talia, my wife, and this, he rubbed her belly, is the newest member of the family. Applause, laughter. I smiled politely. Congratulations. Brandon met my gaze, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker in his eyes, as if he still believed he stood above me. Naomi works in tech, right? Yes, I answered shortly. Cybersecurity. If you've ever returned home with more power than they expected, hit subscribe, because the next part of the story is when everything changes. Brandon smirked. Like fixing Wi-Fi when someone loses signal. He turned to Talia. She used to spend all day on the computer as a kid, like she was from another planet. Maybe she still is. I just smiled. Something like that. My mother clapped. Let's set the table. Naomi, leave your bag there. Brandon's using your old room as an office. You'll sleep on the couch. Of course. Of course I'd be sleeping on the sofa. That evening passed like every holiday gathering from my childhood. I was pushed aside, glances skipped over me, compliments fell on someone else. Aunt Nora came over with a glass of punch. Your brother's starting his own company. So impressive. And you, still doing those little programming things? I build enterprise security software, I replied. She gave a weak smile. Ah, well, someone's got to do that stuff too. Uncle Dan leaned in and whispered, My diners are looking for someone to wait tables. It's honest work, if you're interested. Thanks, but I'm good, I replied politely. At dinner, they seated me at the far end of the table near the kitchen door. Brandon, as always, basked in the spotlight. This will change everything, Brandon announced, his voice full of confidence, as if the world had been waiting for his next big idea. We just need a bit of startup capital to get going. How much? Dad asked. About 200 grand to get started, Brandon replied casually, like he was talking about the price of a used car. I nearly choked on my coffee. It all sounded like a carbon copy of every pitch deck I'd ever debugged for a failing startup. We'll figure it out, Mom said, patting Brandon's hand. Families meant to help each other. After dinner, Mom handed me a blanket and pointed to the couch like it was a routine. No thank you, no good night. Christmas morning arrived with Brandon and his wife, Jenna, bounding down the stairs like kids. The sound of ripped wrapping paper echoed through the house. The gifts I'd sent ahead, expensive, curated, were opened with admiration from the entire family. Naomi, this bag is gorgeous, Mom exclaimed, holding up a handcrafted leather purse. But when it came to my turn, oh no, Mom gasped, too loudly to be accidental. Naomi, we completely forgot. I'm so sorry. Brandon burst out laughing. Just like when we were kids. Don't cry this time, he said with a smirk. You're an adult now, right? I didn't feel sad. I wasn't angry. Only a strange stillness washed over me, like a cold stream clearing my mind. I won't cry, I said calmly, slipping my hand into my bag. Actually, I gave myself a pretty great gift this year. I pulled out a gray steel keychain, its metallic sheen catching the glow of the Christmas tree lights. Mom frowned. What's that? Peace, I replied. The key to my new apartment. I just signed the contract last week. The room fell into silence, like someone had dropped a glass on a tiled floor. Dad blinked. You bought an apartment? With real money? From my job, I answered. The company just signed an exclusive deal with a European bank for the security system I designed. My cut wasn't bad. Mom tilted her head, squinting skeptically. Not bad meaning. How much? I shrugged. About $150,000, after taxes. Not a penny short. You could hear the fork hit the plate. Brandon's mouth dropped. Jenna held her breath. My parents looked at me like I'd just confessed to being an international spy. $150,000, Mom repeated, her voice rising. What kind of job pays like that? I already told you, I said, steady as stone. I'm a security software engineer. I build cybersecurity solutions for Fortune 500 corporations. Dad leaned forward, as if trying to process it all. Since when have you been making that kind of money? Since I graduated, I replied. Bonuses vary, but I've had a six-figure salary for years. And just like that, the energy in the room shifted, as if the whole space changed direction with the wind. Mom stood up, face lit up. Honey, why didn't you tell me sooner? I'm so proud of you. Dad jumped in. Brandon, did you hear that? Your sister works for a Fortune 500 company. Brandon clenched his jaw. Jenna whispered something into his ear. Mom scooted closer to me. So, tell me about the new place. How many rooms? Is there a balcony? I smiled softly. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms near Fort Greene. 10-minute walk to the office. We have to visit, Mom declared like it was law. Family should stay close. I nearly laughed. Family? After 6 years of silence? Actually, I stood up and grabbed my bag. I've got a long drive ahead. I should go. Mom grabbed my hand. You just got here. Stay a little longer. Dad nodded. We haven't even talked about your job yet. As I packed up, I heard their whispers downstairs. Hurried, scheming. I recognized the setup the moment I walked down. They stood waiting, with tense smiles. Before you go, Dad began, about Brandon's startup. He just needs a small amount to get started, Mom added. Brandon stepped forward, grinning like he was doing me a favor. This is a sure investment opportunity. I'm letting you in early. I asked coldly. How much? Just $200,000, he winked. Nothing for someone like you, right? I looked at them, the parents who refused to pay my tuition, the brother who mocked me in front of the whole family. No, I said. The smiles vanished instantly. What do you mean, no? Mom snapped. I mean, I'm not giving a single cent. But, we're family, Dad cut in, like the word was supposed to cast some magic spell. I crossed my arms, eyes unblinking. Where was my family when I got kicked out after graduation, when my tuition was ignored but Dylan got everything? That was different, Mom shouted. We didn't have money back then. But there was money for Brandon, I replied. Brandon had potential, she yelled, then lowered her voice. I thought working would help you mature. I swung my bag over my shoulder. I have to go. You ungrateful brat, Brandon shouted. After everything this family has done for you? I stopped, and my eyes glinted with something no one in that house had ever seen before. What did you do for me? Feed me? Raise me? That's the bare minimum of parenting, not a privilege, and for as long as I can remember, you all made me feel like I was never wanted. I walked out of the house I grew up in, each brick, each door once familiar, now just a hollow shell of something that was never really mine. Mom and Brandon followed behind, still shouting. One day you'll regret this, Mom screamed, her voice sharp, trying to pierce through my resolve. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. No, I won't, I said, my voice light, final. And for the first time in my life, I actually believed it. On the highway, my phone buzzed non-stop, calls, messages, guilt trips crashing like waves against my shore. I pulled into the first rest stop, hands gripping the wheel. I opened my phone, not to read them, but to block them, one by one, as if I was breaking off the rusty chains that once held me to a past that no longer fit. Back in Boston, I poured a glass of red wine and stood on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. No more cold, no more shadows, just one feeling, a breathless kind of relief. Emily texted, I heard what happened. I'm sorry about them. I typed back, don't be, honestly, this might be the greatest gift they've ever given me, freedom, that I'd live a life I chose, not one designed to please others. And today, I'm living that life. Not perfect, but mine. About a month ago, Brandon somehow got my new phone number, the one only a few trusted people had, and called. Hi, Naomi, he began, his voice hollow, trying to sound casual, as if we hadn't spent years in silence. I thought maybe we could talk for a bit. I froze. My hand tightened around the phone. What do you want? I asked, short and clear. There was a brief hesitation on the other end. Madeline should know her aunt. Our parents are having some trouble with the house. Electrical issues. It's a mess. You wouldn't understand. I cut him off. That's not important. I could hear the shift in his breathing. And sure enough, Brandon snapped. You always think you're better than us, but family is family, Naomi. I didn't respond. I just hung up and blocked the number. And as I sat there, in my small but sunlit apartment, beside Ethan, the man who has never asked me to change, who listens even when I say nothing, all I felt was peace. Everything they once said I'd never have. Love, stability, worth, success. I built it all with my own hands. A few days later, Emily texted to say my parents were converting my old bedroom into a nursery. I didn't feel hurt. That room was never really mine. It was a borrowed space, a constant reminder that I was never enough to be held onto. But this apartment, where I chose every chair, every light bulb, every plant by the window, this is mine. They still try to reach me. Through old classmates, former neighbors, even Aunt Nora. I heard her voicemail. Family is forever, Naomi. Don't forget that. But what she doesn't understand is, I haven't forgotten. I've simply moved on. Ethan and I are planning a trip to Japan next month. We're learning hiragana, researching ancient temples, and saving a list of traditional ramen shops to try. For the first time, I'm excited about a journey that isn't tied to obligation or someone else's expectations. That morning, Emily texted again. Mom saw your post, she said. No surprise. She'd rather go on vacation than help her family. I replied simply, maybe this time she'll learn something. Last week, I got promoted, head of engineering, top 1% salary in my field. The director shook my hand and said, You fought for this position. You deserve it. That night, we celebrated with friends. Lisa, my closest colleague, laughed. Your mom probably sensed your bank account went up last night. Ethan brought champagne out to the balcony. The breeze ran through my hair. I said, We should buy a house, with a yard, space for another rescue dog. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Mom says, She's definitely dealing drugs. Where else would she get that kind of money? I laughed. Yes, let them keep building their narrative, where I'm always the problem, always suspicious, always wrong. And me? I'm living my story. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, I want you to know you are not alone. Drop a comment. Tell me what you chose to walk away from and what kind of peace you've built. Your support reminds me that there's a whole community of people like us, learning to live by our own worth. My advice, don't wait for permission to choose yourself. Live a life that reflects who you truly are, not the version others want to impose on you. And if this resonates with you, hit subscribe, because you deserve to be heard.